Okay, so this is a game called Sorcerer. Has anyone heard of it? Feel free to like
That's
unmute
a
yourself and
that's a new one for me.
so this is
Yeah.
by Wise Wizard Games. It's a pretty fun and dark gothic game. I have here an actual physical copy. This was very helpful. It's big, it's a chunky game. It's a chunky game. That's sort of uh, um, a hybrid of a deck builder and a battle game. So you have these three battlefields that you need to conquer. If you get 2 out of 3, then you win. And you can build your deck from a combination of a character, their lineage, and domain. Okay, and then each game you can create like a different deck, and then you sort of battle it out. So I made this layout, what you see in front of yourself, I made this in the past hour just to make sure I know where everything is, just to make sure everything works. So we're going to be creating this from scratch using my asset kit. It's just the perfect game to show this because it does have some tricky components. Has the 8-sided die, it has custom die, it has these standees, which are interesting. And basically cards, boards, and nothing too overly complicated, so it just won't take too long to show off. So that's what we'll be doing. Let me see if there's anyone else waiting to join. Is there anything from Eric and Levy, is there anything you are particularly curious about that you would want to learn?
I just came here to mostly support you.
Yeah.
I just talk to you. But once we get it in the deeper stuff, maybe I have some like I kind of want to see just how your workflow happens because I'm sure there's
Mhm.
like stuff I do that's like, I'm doing 10 steps and you do like in 1 step or something like that. So I'm kind of more curious about that.
That's definitely, and yeah, I'll talk about some of that stuff, how I started out doing things just very manually and slowly find more and more shortcuts and faster ways to work. And it, from keyboard shortcuts to just smarter ways. And I still think I have a lot to learn. That's the thing. It's always a
Yeah.
learning process. And that's why one of the things I said is problem solving. It feels like, a lot of the work with Blender is problem solving. How do I do this? How do I do it in the easiest way?
Mhm.
And less time consuming, and that would give me the same result.
Mhm.
Um,
I, I guess I have a question. Do you have recommendations? And if this is getting too far ahead with your, like,
mhm.
in terms of like looking for custom scenes and like environments and stuff, and like kind of modular. I forgot what's the term called when you have a modular environment. You can buy like a set. Like, what's
But
that?
Blender, Kit Bash.
Yeah, yeah, that. Like, do you have like
We could, if we
recommendations?
have
Or
time, we can give it a try. We can give it a
okay,
try. We'll see
I'm not
that
gonna get way ahead of
that
everybody. So
does get a lot messier.
yeah,
But I love that. I love that. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my. I mean, one of the environments they create. Eric, just so you know, is one of my clients. Okay, I created so far. Eric, how many videos have we done together? Uh, 3,
Three,
right? There was
four actually.
vinyl, night
Night
markets,
Market, Shadow,
and
and
top off.
Top Up.
So we only did 3D for night market, and there we created this
Right.
whole Taiwanese night market, and the stall
Mhm.
itself was the place where the game was, and we had people walking around. We went completely crazy with that one. I really, really enjoyed it to really give that vibe. And it's yeah, I don't know how to model. It's always just looking for assets. That's why I
Right.
hire some people to do stuff for me.
Yeah.
But it's always like a balance between what can I find that's already made. It's better to pay $5 for a model of a lantern than trying to model one.
Totally.
Okay, so I guess we'll start. If someone jumps on, he'll just sort of catch up. So let me share my screen. And if at a certain point you can't see what I'm doing or it's confusing, feel free to stop me. My philosophy with Zoom meetings is I want to make them more like real life. So feel free to interrupt. You don't have to mute yourself all the time unless you have like a dog barking in the background. Ask questions along the way. And then in the end, we'll also have time for questions and stuff like that. So I will just go ahead and just completely start from scratch with the kit. Okay, and disclaimer, everything I'm doing now is based on being able to use the power of this kit, which originally I created it for myself just to make my workflow easier. And then I realized this could be very valuable for other people. So I cleaned it up and I optimized it. And yeah, I'm sort of, if anyone wants to use it, they can now. But the extra step to creating all these assets is to model them. Thankfully, in board games, you don't have anything more complex than boxes and discs and tokens. And, you know, even this is based just on an image of a meeple, which I extruded. So everything here is very simple to create. But here you have just additional, you know, fluff, like I like to call it. You have the linen texture, which I added, beveling the sides just a bit, you know, just creating everything easy to use. I also cleaned up the textures inside here. And sorry, Harold, if you're completely new to Blender, then a lot of what I'm saying might be jargon, but I promise that once we start getting through the process, it'll become clearer. Okay, so the materials are set up cleaner, easier to use with some text here. But I set it up so each template scene starts like this. And now the first thing you always want to do when you open up a new Blender file is save, okay? So, and this is a disclaimer about like everything that you do creatively in Blender anywhere is organization. The more organized you are, the better everything is combined, is put into folders with the right file names, with the right materials. That way, just the workflow becomes so much smoother. Going back to an old project is much easier. So I'll call this a sorcerer layout live, right? And every game has box, every game has some sort of main board. So we're going to start here, and you see I organized all the assets into folders to make them more easier to find. Now, the second thing you need before you start is a reference, okay? It's, I imagine that, Harold, for example, you know your game, and Eric, you know your games very intimately. So you probably know all this by heart, but sometimes you would want to have two types of references. One of them is the dimensions of everything, which is super, super important, okay? Just don't, eyeballing it is okay, but suddenly just something just doesn't fit. So you should have this type of list for your manufacturers, I hope. So this is very handy for us animators to get all the dimensions right and just to plug them in. That's one thing. The other thing is a reference, which could be either done with physical components, if you do have a prototype. If you don't have a prototype, the next best tool is Tabletop Simulator. So I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with Tabletop Simulator. Am I correct? Okay, here, let me expand this so I can see you guys as I'm talking. So this is very helpful because it just shows me the overall expected layout of the game. Obviously, we're not going to copy this one-to-one. And which components are where, how many, you see, I can see exactly how many cards are in each one. And it just saves me a lot of time. So let's get started. I'm going to put this on my other screen, but I'll be looking at it constantly. Let's start with the box. Okay, so to change a box, we just simply click it. If you don't have the box out there, you just go box, drag it in, and you'll have a box. And in the shader panel, which if you can't see, if you don't have it, let me just go through a few Blender basics. Okay, you always have this plus sign, you can drag out a new window, we go down here and shader. Okay, then you need to click the X to kill the template, which I have here, open, and now you navigate to your assets. So I have here everything laid out in final assets. I have the avatars, battlefields, box, card backs, dice, player boards, tokens, and rulebook. I'll go to box and I'll choose the box. So you see, it automatically almost fits exactly, We just need to do some minor adjustments. So like it says here, put your texture here and edit with UV editing. We go up here for UV editing. And UV is basically how the image is wrapping around the model. So first of all, we need to change the actual size of the model. So just move the zoom out of the way here. Okay, and again, sorry for getting into a little bit of basics, but Blender has two modes. You have object mode, which you can manipulate the objects and move them around in space and animate them. And then you have edit mode, where you can actually manipulate the mesh itself and get into the vertices. Okay, so you always need to make sure which mode are you in, and to fix UVs, you need to do that in edit mode. But first of all, let's change the size of the object to be the right size. So I'm looking here, the box should be, okay, so the x-axis should be 100 millimeters. Okay, length should be 335, and then 252.5 tall. Okay, and I'm getting this off the Excel sheet. Okay, that looks good. Now we go back to edit mode using tab. Now you should be able to see my screen keys. Okay, so you can actually see what I'm doing. And now I need to go to face selection over here, which is basically different ways of selecting pieces of my mesh. This is I'm selecting just vertices. Number 2 is selecting the edges, and 3 is selecting faces. And I'll select each face in turn and adjust it on the UV mapping screen. I don't have everything selected at once, because then I don't know, I might be pulling a vertice from here and it could screw up the mapping of the whole thing. So it's best to do it one at a time. Just one of these things that I learned the hard way. So here we have the basic controls of everything, which is S to scale, and then you press one of the axes to scale that direction. So X would be scale on the x-axis, scale on the y-axis, and that's about it. And sorry if I'm going to be a little rougher than I usually am. I'll usually zoom in and put it right on the pixel, but for time's sake, I'll adjust it roughly. Okay. This side. A is for selecting everything. Okay, top. And now I know technically this should be just the cover, but right now what we're showing is how to do an image render. So you don't need to actually have physically a top and a bottom box. If you do, then you need to create a different model. And I am planning on doing that for a future version of the kit, having like actually the lid and the bottom of the box as two separate models. Okay, and now for the bottom, we can click the slash to isolate the box from everything else. Then we go to the bottom. Even though we can't see it, might as well have it there in case we need something else. Okay, and also when you adjust things, if you click Shift, then the speed of scaling will slow down, and that helps you get into tiny details. So let's just put this here. 1, 2, and that's it. We have a box. Simple. Let's continue for the player board. Okay, so first of all, let's get the texture. Same process. Find the player boards. And these player boards are really cool. You want to look at the screen? Okay, you can see me as I'm showing this, right? Yeah. So they actually have two sides, which is, they don't have any sort of game mechanic reason for it. It's just which side you feel like is cooler. So we have a sort of London era side and then an Egyptian side. Okay, for this example, I'll use the London one. I like it better. And again, we're going to look at dimensions. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to mention. Okay. We changed the scale of the box before. Now, if you look at the screen here, we have scale 1.11, 1.031. Okay. The dimensions of this box should always be 1 by 1 by 1 on the scale, and then the dimensions here should be exact. In order to, after we moved it, to apply this shape to be the base size, it's hard for me to explain, but basically we click Control A and we apply scale. So these all become uniform, 1 by 1 by 1, because this is the natural state of the box. It's important to apply your scale to almost everything that you do, because if you add stuff, it just makes the work cleaner. And you'll see that when we get to the standees, because if we want to combine two pieces and they aren't uniformly, the scale isn't applied uniformly, then once you combine them, things start going crazy. So it's just a thing that you should get into a habit of doing, and that's applying scale. Levy, have you been doing that until now? Just wondering.
Sorry, what's your question? I was writing notes.
Yeah.
Let's blank it out.
Have you been applying scale and rotation as you change objects?
Well, I usually, yeah, I mean, I have definitely been doing that. And my thing is, I'm glad you put it up, is like kind of going off by the references and stuff like that. So I do that afterwards. So
Okay, so that's good to hear, because I don't do it at all. So, and that usually gets me into a lot of trouble. Okay, we have a player board, and before we duplicate it and create another one on the other side, I actually want to populate it with everything that should be on the board, because in board games we have many duplicates of things, and it's pointless to create everything twice. So I would finish up everything that's set up for each player, okay, and then only then I'll duplicate it. And if I need to change it, if there's like async players or like different character cards or something like that, then it would change the textures. For example, with Night Market, there's a lot of stuff for each player. So with Eric's game, I created one, made sure all the cards were in place, and only then I duplicated it. So now we need to see what we have on this board. I'm looking at the TTS version again. We have these two counters, an energy counter, an action counter, and just one omen token. So we're in luck. This isn't too much work, and luckily we have everything here ready as a preset. So we start out with one token on number 6. And now you could duplicate it with Shift D and then create a new material. Okay, and a little thing about materials, every time you duplicate an object, you see 3. It has 3 materials, 3 objects in the scene with the same material. So if I change even one, say change this to red, they would all change to red. I don't want that. I want only the new one to change. So there's 2 ways of handling this. One is just clicking this number and making what's called a single user. So now this is a separate material from this, and now I can easily just swap this to red. The other way to do this, and that's the kit, you just drag in a new object, and that object automatically has a new material. So that's just a little shortcut that can help you. And I'll get into another big shortcut, which I discovered recently soon. Okay, we have these 2, and they might not look much now, but that's because we're not in rendered view. We're in look dev mode, which is sort of faking how it would look like. So if we want to see how the actual render would look like, we need to go here. Much better, right? Okay, so this way is obviously a lot slower. So to make our work more efficient, we should be in look dev mode. All right, now we need 1 token up here. So we'll take the circle token. And let me just look at the dimensions. That's 18 by 18. and 1 millimeter. This side, 18 millimeter, 1 millimeter. And this is something new in the recent version of the kit. Tokens have now 2 textures for both sides, but they start out as the same. So if I change this side, let's go to tokens. Okay, choose the omen counter. Okay, so automatically both sides will be the same. Now, if I want a different one for the other side, which that's the case in this game, you see we have one side an omen token and the other side is a damage token. So they're multi-use. So I click the number here again and just open and choose the damage token. See, then we have one side like this and this side like that. Obviously, with a still render, you would only see one side. You can't see the other side, but that might be helpful for you if you're now moving things around and creating a new layout, or you're doing animation. I don't know, that might be very helpful. Okay, so we have one player board. We'll just select everything. Okay, now we selected the camera. A way to stop selecting the camera if you don't want to. Zoom, move out of the way. Here, I'll put you here. Is to go to this place and click here on the arrow. And this way you won't be able to select the camera and move it by mistake. Same thing goes for lights. So I usually, when I work in my scenes, I turn off the selectability of cameras and lights. Okay, so let's go to top view. It's easier to see this way. Let's duplicate everything. R for rotation, 180 to spin it around, and just place it on the other side. Okay. So now we're starting to get this sort of basic layout. We know the space everything is going to take. So it might be a good idea to start placing the camera where we want to, just so we're making sure that we're keeping everything in the same place. Now we're going to get a little bit more into composition later, but just for now, I want to, for example, let's say I want this to be a banner. I'm already thinking about that. So let's create it the right size. And oh, I saw that my screencast keys is gone. Turn this back on, sorry. Okay, and I love using this mode of moving the camera. You press Shift and the tittle key, I never know how to pronounce that. And then you have this sort of FPS type camera where you can move with the WSAD. Q and E goes up and down. And this feels very natural, especially if anyone came here from actual photography, to frame your shot, and then you click the camera, and it locks into place. Okay, so let's have our camera here and continue working. Next, let's do our battlegrounds. So one way to do it is just to add a new board here, or to duplicate this one. Let's just add a new one here. Make it smaller. Let's look at the dimensions. Battlefield is 156 millimeter by 112 millimeter. Okay. And let's change the texture. We'll choose the London battlefield. Okay, now in the game, technically there's 2 sides, and this matters because the moment you conquer a battlefield, you need to flip it to the other end, and you place your counter here if you won. Okay, so I'll show you how to add a texture on the flip side. So right now the flip side is black. What I want to do is add a new texture here, a new material, sorry, and choose the original one that was on the front end. So game board material. There we go. Let's make a new copy of it. So this is a new material now. And now we need to go to edit mode. Again, face selection, select the bottom side of the board. Click the material and then click assign. Okay, and now it knows this material needs to go here. By the way, I'm just making sure we don't have any other participants wanted to come in. Okay, that's good. Okay, what's the only thing that we need to do? Do you see what the problem is? It's flipped. So there's two ways to flip it to the correct orientation. One is here in the mapping node. You could just go to scale and plug in -1. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is through the UV editing, where you basically do the same thing. I won't do that now. You just select it and you flip it. Okay, let's choose the correct texture. And here we have Conquer London. Okay, also each battlefield needs to have this wooden cube on the marker, and this is how you show the damage. As you deal more damage to the battlefield, it moves up, you get to 12, you conquer it. So luckily we have a wooden cube and it's the right color, so we can just plop it in. The size are 8mm by 8mm, not meters. That's a really big cube. 8mm by 8mm by 10. These cubes actually aren't uniform, which is interesting. So we have one here, one on the other end, and then we're going to duplicate this. And Levy, this is a trick which I hope you know. Okay, we basically duplicate it once, and we need to duplicate it exactly the same way again. And a shortcut to redo the last action you did, but using the sort of same parameters, is Shift R. And that will just place another object at the exact same distance.
I did not know that.
It is.
I just did Shift D. That keep on doing Shift D again.
It is super helpful. And once you get to know that more, some things just become so much easier. Creating decks of cards, for example, you just create one duplicate. We'll get to that in a moment. And then you just Shift R, Shift R, Shift R, the amount of times you need, other than using an array modifier, which takes a lot longer. Okay, so I will quickly, okay, so now these two need to have different textures. We could go to each one, click it, click the number here, go here, click the number here to create new materials. Another shortcut, which I recently discovered, is you click the objects which you want to have new materials, give them new materials. You go to zoom, move out of my way. Object. You go to relations, make single user materials. You click that and automatically all of the materials become new. Unfortunately, this does include like board material, which is just the side, which should technically stay the same, but it's such a small amount of data, it shouldn't be that much of a deal. Okay, so let's choose the second one and the third one. And now if you see, let's go to bird's eye view. You can see that this is actually creating this panoramic picture of London. You see one side of the street, the center, and the right side. I'm not going to bother.
Shortcut again. I'm sorry, I missed that shortcut. The duplicate the material.
Oh, you go to object. You go to relations, make single user, and then materials.
Gotcha. Okay.
And here's another tip. You can add this by right-clicking. You can add this to quick favorites. And then every time you press Q, it's going to appear. And
Gotcha.
Here I have a bunch of stuff which I use all the time. Origin to geometry, select active camera, randomize transform. It's stuff that I use all the time. And I just thought about adding that because I'm finding it's very useful. All right, let's get into something interesting, which I think is the most complex thing I will show today. And we'll work on unique shaped tokens. And in this case, the avatars, okay? You have these little standees, you can see in the camera, and they're built out of two cardboard pieces. We have the bottom and we have the top, okay? So how do we create these? I couldn't find a way to make a template for that. You have to go the long way. So this is the process I use. No, this isn't the right project, sorry. Give me a moment. Okay. So here we have the avatars, and we have PNGs, okay, outlining the token which we need to create. This is essentially a token, okay? It just has a unique shape to it. So what we need to do, if you do have Adobe Illustrator, this is the fastest way to do it, but you can easily do this online, okay? And that's to create an SVG file, which is a vector-based file which Blender can read. If you search Google PNG to SVG online converter, you'll find a free site that does it for you with basically the same result. So these are the 3 steps. Let's do it the long way. And I'm sorry, I need to close this because there's some client work which I can't show. Okay. Open Photoshop and Illustrator. Give it a moment. Actually, let's start straight away with Illustrator. Just open Illustrator, drag in your file, and now we need to turn it into a vector. So for that, we have the image trace panel. Okay, you can also find it up here. And you need to do image trace. Okay, now you need to take the threshold all the way to the top and then take it down by 1. So we only have the outline and everything else is filled with black. The reason I wanted to open Photoshop, that sometimes this doesn't work. It will still recognize some pieces and it will separate them and making them white, and we want everything to be black. So the way to overcome this is you just open Photoshop, select the whole token, fill it with black, and export it. Okay, just like I did with this base outline. Okay, in this case, it worked. We need to open advanced and tell it to ignore white. We only want the black. And then last but not least, we click expand. What happened now? It turned into a mathematical object, basically. It's everything here is based on math. You can zoom in infinitely and you won't see pixels. Okay, everything is vectorized. Now we go to File, Export as, and as an SVG. Okay, you just choose it from the menu here. Click OK. Back to Blender. You go to File, Import SVG. Let's navigate to our folder. And well, what's her name? Her name is Ms. Zelda. Okay, here's Ms. Zelda. Okay, where are you? Should appear as what's called a curve. I'm going to isolate it from everything else and look from the top. Okay, so this, if you go to edit mode, you can also see that it's still made out of vertices of a vector. It's not a mesh. We can't make it 3D. It's only flat. So in order to turn it into a mesh, we need to go to Object, Convert. Oh, something is wrong. Yeah, I need to be in edit mode. Okay, so here you see the same points that we had in Illustrator. Let's select everything. No, that's not in edit mode. We needed to go Object mode, Convert, Mesh. Yeah, that's it. And now we're going to go to edit mode, and you see it looks completely different. Now it has vertices, it has edges, it has faces, just like every other object. But this is really messy. So the way to get rid of all these lines, to make it very simple, is you select everything, you click on X, and then you go to Limited Dissolve. This took me a long time to figure out, but now we have a nice clean mesh, just one face on each side, and it doesn't always work, but 90% of the times I've done it this way, you just get a nice clean mesh. And now it's very easy to E, extrude on the Z axis. How thick are those tokens? They're about 1 millimeter. So no, that's too much. 1 millimeter, that's it. And there you go. We have our token. It should look like this. Now we just need to texturize it. So that's even simpler. You could technically just create a whole new material, but I want to keep my linen texture, which I have. And if you look closely at tokens, oh, actually this token, now I'm looking, does not have linen texture. It's completely smooth. Okay, so scratch that. Let's create a whole new material. Let's call it avatar. And here, this is the basic material setup. We want to add an image texture. So we do that by doing Shift A, image. Okay, open up and find our avatar and connect it to the base color. An easier way to do that is to just do it, hold on, is just to click this dot here, image texture, and it'll connect it for you automatically. But let's just do that. And oh my God, this is a mess. This shouldn't look that way. So yeah, right now it's sort of plastering on the image, but it doesn't know where it needs to go. So the easiest way to do that, it would be to add texture coordinate. What did I read? Texture coordinate. There we go. And a mapping node. And then we just need it. Sorry, we need to connect them to each other. But Levi, do you know the shortcut here? I hope you do.
I do not.
Okay, so you need to go to Edit Preferences and turn on what's called the Node Wrangler add-on. Once you add that, to add these two nodes, you simply press Control T. And they automatically pop in exactly the way you want them to. But it's still not the right placement. That's because we don't have UV mapping yet. It doesn't know where to go. The shortcut would be to drag the generated into vector, and voila. What is generated? Generated literally means I will take the photo and I'll project it from the top up to the edges of the mesh. And because the mesh is based on the image, it looks perfect. But since we need to combine it to something else later, that's going to give us a lot of problems. So we want to actually put it on UV. Go to UV editing. And I'm really sorry, this is getting to like what feels like very advanced stuff, but promise you this is advanced as we go. Okay, now we have the mesh, we have the UV. Right now, you can see that it's reading just the bottom line here. We need to tell it to project from the top. How do we do that? We press on, we need to make sure we're in edit mode. Press U, and then project from view bounds. Bam. Then it basically does what it did automatically and generated. It's taking the image, projecting it from the way we're viewing it, the object right now, and putting that on the UV map. This wouldn't have worked if I would have done it like this, for example, because the view is different. We need to look at it from the top. It looks like the funhouse mirrors right now. And project from view, and there you go. Now from the other side, we want to have the same thing. So we click this side, and let's turn around. I'm using the number pads to do this. UV, project from view, bounds. But there's a problem. This is flipped. So we need to select the map here with A. And this is what I talked about before. We press S -1, SX, sorry, -1 to flip it. And there we go. Only thing that's left is to add the cardboard side. We want to be realistic and we see the cardboard side. So in order to do that, we have to, again, go to edit mode. Now we want to select the loop that goes around the edges of the token. In order to do that, let me turn on the screen keys again. It just keeps turning off for some reason every time I switch modes. You need to press Alt, hold Alt, and click one of these edges here. This would select automatically the full loop of the token. You need to make sure you're in face selection mode. It doesn't work in edge selection, see? Or in vertices. So that's how we select the full loop. Add a new material. And now since we already have the cardboard material when we did the tokens, we should find it here, cardboard side. This is how it's called in my kit. So I'm gonna select this and assign, but it doesn't look right. Okay, this doesn't look realistic. If we look at one of the tokens compared to this, just a second. Zoom in. Okay, so you see how it's supposed to look like. This is a procedural texture I created that sort of mimics the way cardboard actually looks. You can even see the tear seams when you get it out of the punch board. In previous videos, I even added like a bit which sticks out when it doesn't punch out perfectly, and you have like a bit of cardboard. But to simplify it here, I made it a perfect circle. Okay, so to get that right, we need to go to edit mode. Again, make sure we're selecting just the seam here. Look at it from the side. And again, project from view. Just project from view regularly, okay, no, without bounds. And then we just need to take the UV map here and scale it up, okay? So this is by far the most complicated thing I'll try to show you today. Let me know if you have any questions about this process, because this is it. This is how you create a unique shape token. Levy, any questions?
No, you're doing great. I'm writing down these shortcuts and everything. So it's a ton of help.
Eric? Awesome.
I'll rewatch the video.
Harold? Following along? Okay, that's good to know. So
yeah, I'll just do what Eric's going to do.
I'm trying to, in one hand, I know that this is recorded and people could watch it. On the other hand, I want to get as much stuff as possible, but I want to create the workshop experience, worth it, so you can actually interact and ask questions for stuff that you want to know. Okay, let's stand this up. So I'm gonna rotate it on the x-axis. Let's turn on the screen keys again. And let's put it in this battlefield over here for now. Okay, here's another shortcut. How do we make things stick to the table? Okay, we always need to float them up, and the obvious way to do it would be, G, Z, and then try to get it just as close as you can. Zoom in, look at it from the side, try to make sure. This takes a long time, okay? The best way I found to do this is to turn on snapping on face. Okay, snapping basically means it will connect as closely as possible according to these parameters. So if it's on increment, it'll just go up and down according to the Blender increments. Okay, so you see all the squares here. But if we select face, basically if we press G, just G, it will automatically stick to the floor, okay, or the board, or wherever I place my cursor, or on top of this box. So I wanted to go straight down and press Z, and now it's flat. Okay, to make things a little quicker, I already created all the rest of these assets of the avatars. So I'm just going to bring them in now, so it just doesn't take too long. There we go. There's my fine fellows. Let's bring them over here. Move things around a bit. create some more breathing space. Okay, let's look at our composition. Okay, that's still fine. All right, so we have this piece, which is just waiting for Miranda. What's her name? Keep forgetting her name. Mizelda. Yeah. Okay, so we want to combine these. Origin to geometry. 90. Let's look at it from the top. Okay. Almost. It's like doing paper crafts. Oh, and I need to turn snapping off. Don't forget to do that. Otherwise, you see now it's not. Okay, there we go. We want to combine them. So every time we move them, we don't want to select both of them. So we just select both objects and we do Control J. Now, if we didn't set up everything the way we just did with the UVs and everything, this moment everything would have just gone crazy. The textures would have started wrapping differently. Blender wouldn't have known which thing needs to go there, because that always happens if you have something in the generated node. Okay, it will just now everything's fine, but everything will just go crazy. And as long as we apply scale and we make sure that we're using UV mapping, everything should be fine. And this is important if you like combining, you know, if you want to create the whole player setup as one object. That's another option. Okay, I don't want to move everything around. I want everything to be one object, so I'll do Control J, and then everything will just be one thing. I don't know why it didn't work right now. Control J, there we go. Okay, so just make sure you keep everything organized and naming everything and making sure the maps are set up correctly. Okay, what else do we have to do? Okay, let's get into dice now, because I'm seeing we're running short on time, and that's something which I want to show. So we have here 4 kinds of dice: numbered dice, white die, black die with pips, and the custom die. Most dice will be custom dice. We have here the duck, and we want to change it to our cool sorcerer dice. So let's go up here, dice, custom dice, and now we need to go to UV editing. So you see, they set it up this way, where you have each type of side just separately, and we need to tell Blender which side should go where. So this is very similar to the box. The way that we did the box, we just select a side, a pip, and we map it accordingly. But first of all, we want to make sure all the squares are the right size and they're uniform. They're the same size. So I'm actually going to select everything. And here, select everything here. And make sure that these squares are aligned. So I'll take the top left corner here, right up to the edge here. Okay, and then here's another trick which I do. I'll take the 3D cursor. In this case, it's called a 2D cursor. And I click over here. Just roughly there. And then I go up here, and the pivot point, I select the 2D cursor. Now when I resize it, everything will be calculated based on that origin. So SX, scale it down to here. SY, scale it down to here. And now all the squares should be the same size. Okay, so now that done, we can start selecting each square, and I'm now holding the die as reference. I'm just going to be placing each one at the correct spot. So this is one skull. Oh, okay, and it's upside down, so I just need to go back. Don't forget to go back to bounding box RZ 180. Okay, tilt up, pure white. Just leave it here. Tilt up. We have another skull, so just place it here. Tilt up. We got another white. go to the left. We have, oh, that's fortunate. It is the two skulls. They just need to be, whoops, see, rotated. And then we flip to the last side. And we have, of course, the star. Okay. Now you see there's a bit of imperfections because we can see the lines. The easiest way to solve it rather than just moving it around on the map is just to create a new map without those white lines and just to switch them out. Okay, but for time, I won't do that now. The same thing goes for bleed lines. With boxes, sometimes you have the bleed lines and the art is bigger than what you see in the actual box. So I would create a map with the bleed lines to make sure that I have everything as accurately as possible. And then I would switch it for a non-bleed version. Question about the die? No? Good. Okay, let's flip it to the more interesting side, which is the star here. Now we need to duplicate them. So we have how many? 2, 4, 6, 7. 7 classic. 7-pointed star. Okay. And now later I would individually like move them to different sides. Or actually we can do that now. Just, okay, we need to go to local axes, so they would turn on their own axis. What's going on? 90. Okay, just turn them to different sides so it's more interesting visually. Skull. 80, there we go. Okay, let's look at our scene. Okay, this looks nice. All we have to add now is cards. Cards is pretty simple. I have all these decks here, which I just drag out. And if I'll look at Tabletop Simulator, we have basically the same configuration repeated 3 times, just different amounts, which I could adjust later. So let's just create one of these and then duplicate it twice. I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. Duplicate. Duplicate. And just one card here because it's supposed to be just 4 cards. And you see with the kit is just so simple. It's so much faster. Yeah, selection mode. Okay, and then we duplicate this and Shift R to do that again. Look at our composition already. Okay, we can start seeing where the empty spaces are. We need to think about that. And I think I will now do a shortcut and go back to the scene which I already created. There's nothing new here, just getting the cards, getting the textures right, and placing everything. We also have piles of tokens. Okay, so we have a token pile here, and that's very simple. You just choose the right texture. Okay, for example. So I want to switch now to the scene which I already created, because here it's just, just choosing a pile and selecting the right texture, and we can work a little bit about composition, unless you have any questions at this point. All right, nothing? Okay, so let's go, I saved this. Let's go to what I've been working on. So you see it's almost exactly the same. I also added here a rule book. Turn on air conditioning a bit. Which is a recent model which I added, which comes in with all the right textures. You just need to change the cover, the back, and it looks amazing. And the other thing which was really hard to do actually, it was an 8-sided die, which is basically the same process as a 6-sided die. It just takes longer. And the way I created this mesh, and this is Levy, this is another tip. If you go to preferences and add on, you have extra objects. okay? And that just adds tons of stuff which you can add here. Okay, you have gears, you have round cube, rocks, diamonds, teapot, all sort of fun stuff. So this was basically created by doing a diamond and adjusting all the things here. So it would be the same parameters as in 1d8, basically. Okay, so that was actually very simple. And then I have the d8 here. It will just take too long to create, so I won't do this now. Okay, so now we want to create an interesting composition. We have basically all the components of this game laid out. We want to think of how do we present this in an appealing way. The first thing we should think about is who, it's all story-based. What's the story we're telling here? What's the hero of this story, of this image? And with board games, it's usually pretty simple. And the answer is the box, okay? The cover. That's what you see when we go to the store. The cover should be the most detailed, the best piece of artwork, and should be telling us as much as we can about the game. And I love the Sorcerer cover. It just shows so many things happening. You have a werewolf, you have magic, you have creatures, you have horror. So while this is a good way to show like all the components, if you want to see what you're getting with this game, and hold on, let me just append here Miranda from our previous project. Live objects. Just give me a second. Curve. Okay, there she is. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. For an ad, okay, for something that's more promotional, I want to give the box a better, bigger centerpiece. So let's bring this forwards. Let's bring the camera down a bit. Okay, so we would want to have something roughly like this, and now we want to think already, do we want to have copy? Okay, do we want to have like launching now on Kickstarter on the side here? Do we want to have you know, just more info, or is this just this? Okay, so let's go for that. Let's go for something square this time. 1920 by 1920. There we go. Okay. And now we need to think how we could fill this frame with the most interesting pieces of components. So first of all, I want to move everything like over here. There we go. So let's try adding this piece over here. Okay. It can't be too full, but it can't be too empty either. Okay, the avatars definitely are cool. I think it would be cool to line them up in front of the box. Make sure we see their good side. Oops, it's not combined. Okay. I do love these the tokens. Where did they go? Okay, these guys. Oops, they're just not here, I guess. Let's bring these in. Okay. Now it's sort of a balance between showing cool components and just an overabundance of like cool stuff. So let's get some token piles here on the side. Actually want the omen tokens because those are also really important for the game. and they look really cool. Okay, what else? This is a deck builder, so we need to show cards, definitely show a lot of cards. Let's put this, just a hint of this on the side. And like I said, it's the whole issue of, you have your lineage, your domain, and your character. So it'll be cool to have like the 3 decks next to each other. Let's just make the camera unselectable, the light unselectable. One deck disappear. There we go. Second. There we go. Okay, how does this look like? Now this is, I'm thinking on the fly here. I'm playing around with it. I'm trying new things. This is the point where there's no laws. This is where you get really creative and you start experimenting with things, moving them around. Okay. Let's bring these closer together. Another thing I do want to keep in mind is what happens if they want a few different formats. So time I'll just have a look. I don't want to move this around. Let's keep this camera here, create a new camera. Control 0 will snap me to the new camera. And now let's look at the different dimension here. This. Okay, so we already have like 2 versions of this. So let's go back to this one and resize the frame. I really wish Blender had an option of saving like frame dimensions to each camera. There might be one, which I'm not aware of. This looks good. I'm trying to think if we want to add more. Oh, the dice, definitely. Definitely want to add the dice in. We're missing one. Let me add just one more. Okay, so that's perfect for this place over here. Let's bring the black die over here. That's a cool looking one. And let's flip these around a bit. Go to local. Sure we can see that omen clearly. Let's rotate it this way. 80 degrees. Okay, let's look at our screen. How does this look? Any suggestions, guys? Feel free to talk. What do you think about this? Do you want to see this in rendered view? Let's see what we have. Sometimes it's very easy to get distracted by the background. So there's another trick you can do here. You select your frame, select that camera, go down to just viewport display, and then you have Passepartout, and you put that all the way to the end, and it sort of blackens out everything else, and you can really focus on the frame. Yeah, I'm open to suggestions. What do you think about this so far?
I think a lot of headroom, so you might want to bring it a little down. That's good. That's like much better.
Bring it even a little bit back.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Just, yeah, I like having all this. Let's see, then we can sort of bring this in a bit. Let's go back to global. And now, obviously, I don't love seeing this background here. So what you usually do, even though we might try to think how creative we want to get with this. And Blender decided to freeze. Now, the good thing about Blender, it almost always autosaves. Okay, so one way to do this would be to create what's called a studio floor. Let me just size this down. Flip it this way. You go to edit mode, select the edge, and then you look at it from the side. Oh, wait, so sorry. Let me bring it back this way. Look at it from the side, go to edit mode, select the edge, this edge, and then you just extrude, 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 extrude. And then you sort of create this studio background. And then we just switch it, shade smooth to make it smooth. And then you have the full black background. You still get lighting from the HDRI, and this should look pretty good. Nice. I might even bring these guys closer. Right up over here. Floating a bit. Let's do the snapping trick. Okay. Okay, so now just go to individual origins. Let's ask the question again. What's the story we're telling here? Basically, we need to think, what's the hierarchy of what we're going to be looking at? We look, first of all, we see the box when we see this image. Let's actually create, I'm just afraid of crashing my computer. Let me, let's do like the 50% of this. And 10 seconds. Okay, let's create a render. Okay, this is a good start. I'm seeing where the light is coming in, and now I feel like the cover is a little bit too dark. Okay, and I want more light on the box, so that would be the true focus. And then I want the eyes to move down here to the characters. Okay, faces automatically attract us, so we'll automatically see them. Definitely the blue girl is the most prominent one. The rest are sort of the same color, so it's harder to see. I'll see if I can adjust the camera a bit so we have a better view of this. And then we move, we see the dice, we see the cards here. I think I want to add a little bit more cards just to show the massive amount of cards you get in this game. And I'll sort of make everything just a bit tighter. Okay, so let's track everything from here, make it closer. Bring the dice just a bit closer. Select the camera. Try maybe narrower focal length. Okay, this is a bit better. Move these out of the way. Obviously, you should save a copy of the previous version. So let's do that. Let's call it sorcerer add. Okay. And we wanted to bring in maybe some more cards. Let's see if we can. Not 100% sure about that. I have another idea. Maybe we can like have floating cards here in the air. Showing off like some characters or like something like that. So this should essentially have the same back, but here for the front, we can choose some cards. And that's the beauty of 3D. We can have things floating in the air. It's not a problem. Let's go here, cards. base set. Now let's choose her. And do the same. One more. And here we can choose a domain. Hellfire cult. Oh, well, we forgot to make a new material. This happens to me all the time. Just don't forget about that. Let's do that from the Hellfire cult. Lineage, sorry, and now domain. Let's see, which domain shall we choose? Of the, oh, yeah, the Spider Kingdom. Okay. So this is cool. We have a lot more to see, but now we can't see the dice. So let's perhaps switch the locations here. Bring this over here. Sorry. Select the dice. They all should be in their own collection, but I see they're not. So that's an easy way to do it. Add a collection, call it dice. And this is going back to organization. And if this wasn't live, it would have been way more organized. And now we can just sort of hide them for a sec. Select these. Bring it back. And then we just select dice and bring them to the front. Okay. Maybe spread these out just a bit. And I really don't like seeing those white faces, so let's just flip those around a bit. There we go. Okay, let's have a look. Three, two, one. All right. What do you guys think? Much better, right? And it leaves us a little place here for a logo. You see, I'm always thinking about what else we want to add. Logo, maybe some messaging, something like that. I still want to switch around the lighting. So for this, I'm using an HDRI. There's no lamps in the scene. But we might want to actually, because it's such a moody and dark theme, we might want to go with lights to make it more horror. Here I can sort of just rotate the HDRI to give us a better starting off position. Okay, this is better. I do want to make this weaker. Let's go to there. And now let's add start by a point light and see what happens. Bring it a little bit back. Sorry for not like explaining everything and just going into like full creative mode. I hope that's okay. Let's make sure that this is in a new collection called lights. So it'll be easier for me to find. Always want to be able to play with it, turn it off, turn it on. Sorry, this here, the adjustments, this is an add-on which I bought, which I highly recommend. It's called Photographer. It just has tons of very useful shortcuts. Okay, this is not bad. Now I do want some reflections. So let's go to the white floor, which isn't white, it's black. And let's turn the roughness down. Let's turn all the way down. Let's make this mirror. Nah, that's too much. 0.1. 0.2. Okay, this is now much more interesting. We can feel like the 3D vibe of it. Do you guys want to create some smoke? Do you want to add some? Let's add. I feel like it really should fit here to do some smoke. Okay, so quick tutorial for doing some smoke. We need to create a cube. Okay, and then go to the shader panel. Oh, small tip, if you get caught in the void of the shader panel, you can't find your nodes, the easiest way to get back to them is press A, home, and A, and then, why is this working now? Oh, because it doesn't have a material. You need to create a material. So if, let's say, this happens, so you do A, and then you press the numpad period key, and it zooms into it. Forget home, that's something else. Okay, so now we want to take off the principal BSDF and add a volume, principled volume. Connect that to volume. Okay, now we're starting to get smoke. We can take down the density. We can choose the color, but usually the default is fine. Let's see what happens. Okay, this is way, way too much. Let's bring it down. 0.01. And 0.05. Okay, and you see it's very, very subtle, very subtle. But we can, in a moment, we'll see the difference. I'm going to save. I'm going to go here and create a new slot number 2. And then let's render there. And then we could see before and after. Three, two, one. There we go. Before, after, before, after. Yeah, the smoke isn't really helping here. No, I don't like the smoke. I would actually do that with post later. Let's create another version without the smoke. Yeah, I think this is it. So what do you guys think?
Looks rad.
Thank you for joining me on this crazy venture. Yeah.
Just a quick question. If you were going to add something in the upper right corner, like you said, a logo or something, would you do that with another application like Illustrator, Photoshop or something? Or is that something in Blender where you could add something?
I would definitely do that with another application. It is possible to do it with Blender, but it's better to have them separated because those things change a lot. Okay, you want to change text, you want to change, you know, White Wizard Games is Wise Wizard Games today, so they changed their logo. So yeah, that is something definitely you want to have separate, so you don't have to re-render it basically. I do that same for video work. So you have the basic pass, which is the animation, and then we have all the effects. Like we said, the mist, I would want to add as another layer on Photoshop, just create a nice mist in the background. I don't need to do that here, even though I could. Here's like, for example, if I want to get like really creative and I technically said we have 7 minutes, so you could either ask questions or we could fool around with this. What would you prefer?
I'm okay. I don't have any questions, so I would like to I just like watching you do your stuff, and that kind of helps me. So, but I don't know where everybody else is at. So,
I'd just say dealer's choice.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think I would love to add cobblestone as the floor here. That's one thing I would love to add. And there's a few ways of doing this. Okay. There's so many assets which are free online. Specifically here, I'm using an add-on called a Blender Kit. Yeah, that's called Blender Kit. Very useful, very easy to use. You basically have this little bar here. You have objects, you have materials, you have even scenes, HDRIs, and there's just so much stuff here. So let's write cobblestone. Tell me if I'm writing it, misspelling it or something. Okay, that looks good. And we can look, find something that we like. Well, that's pretty crazy, but I'm looking something that would fit. Okay, I think this is it. Just have a look here. Yeah, this is more or less the vibe I'm looking for. I would want to create a copy of my floor. It's funny that it's still called white floor. And just drag and drop. Yep, see, simple as that. Very easy. Another tool I would recommend is using Sketchfab. Okay, Sketchfab has this add-on. It's basically this huge library of assets. So for example, not all of them are commercial. You need to make sure that whatever you're using, you're seeing what it could be used for. So let's look for like a vintage lamp. Let's try lamp. We'll see if we can find like an oil lamp here. Perfect. Right, this is the one I'm looking for. Oh wait, this is even cooler. So let's just import this. Okay, I think it's huge, so let's make it smaller. How big is this?
I can relate to this problem.
Yes. Okay. Let's Shift S. I get this menu, which is really helpful. A selection to cursor. There we go. Okay, so now we can have this like over here, maybe. These tokens down here. What is, sorry. Rule book can move out of here. And we can even add, let's close this, maybe in the middle, can add a tiny light. Okay, now don't do a lamp. Do a UV sphere. Make it tiny. Call it lamp light. And turn on the emission. Okay, let's make it yellow. Strength. It's glowy. So weird. It doesn't feel like we're in rendered view. Did we change to Eevee? How did we change to Eevee? I don't remember doing that. I need to look at the recording. Okay, so there's two render types. There's Eevee, there's cycles. I would highly recommend using cycles, even though it's heavier. Oh, look at that. That is so cool. Oh, they do have a lamp inside here. So let's make this disappear. Let's find this lamp. Look at the material. Emission. Okay, so there is an emission here. Emission strength. There we go. Lights on. He gave me everything that I need. It's 80. Oh, this is really cool. Okay. Now it's weird that the cobblestone sort of stretches upwards. It feels like an inception. So let me think. Let's see if we can build like a wall here. Let's write wall. Let's see what we come up with. Brick wall. Okay, this is cool. So let's create cube. Make it thin like a wall. And place it at the background. Go, make sure we can see it in the background. Get just a little bit closer like that. And give it the right material. This one we wanted, right? And it almost always like wraps around perfectly. So let's see, give it a second. 92 megabytes. It's pretty big. Okay, perfect. So here, yeah, we need to readjust it. Let's go to UV editing. Okay, basically, you need to check this. Oops. There we go. Back to layout. All right. Want it to be a bit darker, this wall. Oh, we're out of time. Okay, so let's render and see what we come up with. All right, ready? Render image. No, I'm not a fan of this. I don't want this wall. Sorry for going over time. Gotta get rid of this wall. Let's just turn it into black. Let's turn it back into our white wall. There we go. That's better. Loading, loading, loading. There we go. Thank you, guys. So yeah, now all we need to do is save this image and hope the client likes it. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been
thank you very much.
really, really fun. I hope that was coherent and interesting. And yeah, let me know if you have any last questions about the kit or
I just
about
want to thank,
Blender in
yeah,
general.
just thanks for doing this. I got like a laundry list of stuff I learned, so it was definitely valuable for me. So
Amazing. And also wanted to make sure, is this okay to share this recording with you? Because the recording will include everything, including seeing you, your questions. Is this fine, Harold? Is this fine?
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay, that's good to know. So thank you so much. I hope to do more. I don't know about what. I want to do things just about theory more, like storytelling and stuff like that. Because as you see, a lot of technical stuff can just be a little bit dry. But this is sort of a rundown of just how to use the kit as in the easiest way possible. But we'll see what we do. But thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
All right,
Have a great
take care.
day.